Alright guys, Act 3, Scene 2, we are at a hall in the castle. Enters Hamlet and the actors, and at the very beginning of this, Hamlet is giving the actors direction on how to present the play to the king and the queen and the entire court. So he says, "Speak this speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. But if you mouth it as many of your players do, I had as lief to the town crier spoke my lines." So basically, he has told these actors how he wants the speech to be presented, where to raise your voice, where to lower it, when to use a hand motion. And he's going to continue to do that. He's going to talk about, nor do not saw the air too much with your hands. So don't talk like this with a lot of hand movements. And he continues on, but use all gently from the very torrent tempest, and as I may say, whirlwind of passion, you must acquire and beget a temperance that may give it smoothness. Oh, it offends me to the soul to hear a robustious, periwig-pated fellow tear a passion to tatters. The periwig-pated fellow is somebody in a wig. So he's just talking about how he hates it when an actor comes on stage who's all dressed as the character with a big stupid wig on his head, and then they just do a terrible job by presenting the lines. And then he continues, for the most part are capable of nothing but inexplicable dumb shows and noise. Dumb shows are mime shows. So he's saying these people are not fit to do anything but stand on stage and do mime. I would have such a fellow whipped for o'erdoing. Termagant, it out Herod's. Herod, pray you avoid it. So he just doesn't want these guys to overact. And the player goes, I warrant your honor. I hear you. And Hamlet continues, be not too tame neither, but let your own discretion be your tutor. Suit the action to the word to the action, with this special observance, that you are a step not the modesty of nature, for anything so overdone is for the purpose of playing, whose end both at first and now was and is to hold as toward the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her own image, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of the time is form and pressure. So basically he's saying that when these actors on the stage and when they present their dialogue, that it needs to be authentic, that they have to seem authentic. And this is really important to Hamlet because the characters need to be authentic in order to catch Claudius's inauthenticity of the lies of the mask that he's hiding behind of a goodly king who, because he's a murderer. So Hamlet is trying to say the more authentic you can present these lines, then we will catch the king at his trickery, at his treachery. Words. Okay, so he comes on, he's still talking about it, and then the player goes, I hope we have reformed that indifferently with us, sir. So he mentioned a couple of things that they needed to fix, and the player's like, we fixed those. We fixed a few of them, and he's like, oh no, fix them all, reform it all together, and let those plays that your clowns speak no more than is set down for them, for there be of them that will themselves laugh, to set on some quantity of barren spectators to laugh too, though in the meantime some necessary question of the play be then to be considered, that's villainous and shows a most pitiful ambition in the fool that uses it. Go make you ready. This part, he's talking about clowns, or people back in the day, Shakespeare's day. Theater troupes would have clowns or fools who would come out and entertain the audience in between acts. What he's saying is that some of these fools, some of these clowns would get out on stage and the audiences would really be responding well to them. So instead of leaving when they needed to so the play could continue, they would just eat up all that attention and they wouldn't get off stage when they needed to. So he's saying, do not let that happen with this troupe. Do not let your clown come out here because we have business. Hamlet's handling business tonight at the play. So then the players exit, and Polonius and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come in. So Hamlet addresses them, how now, my lord, will the king hear this piece of work? And Polonius goes, and the queen too, and that presently. And Hamlet goes, bid the players make haste. So Polonius leaves. And then Hamlet goes, will you too help to hasten them? So he like shoos Rosencrantz and Guildenstern off too, and he says, "We will, my lord." And so then they exit stage left. And then Horatio comes in, and Hamlet's super pumped. He's like, "What ho, Horatio?" Which rhymes. Wait ho, Horatio. And then Horatio comes in, and he goes, "Here, sweet lord, at your service." And Horatio, Hamlet goes, "Horatio, thou art in just a man, as ere my conversation caught with thou." So he's telling him how dear he is. And Horatio goes, "Oh, my dear lord." And Hamlet's like, "Nay, do not think I flatter. So what I'm saying to you is not just mere flattery." He says, "For what advancement may I hope from thee?" Because he's like, "Why flatter you? You can give me nothing." And he continues, "That no revenue hast, but thy good spirits to feed and clothe thee. What should the poor be flattered?" So he's kind of like talking about himself. He's like, what could a common man give me, a prince? I'm not going to flatter you. The words that I say to you are true because I have nothing to gain from you. You have nothing to give me. You have no money. You have no station. You have nothing. I say these things freely, and I mean them." And so he continues, "No, let the candied tongue lick absurd pomp, and crook the pregnant hinges of the knee, where thrift may follow fawning. Dost thou hear?" So he's like, "I would never, kiss your butt for no reason." And he continues, "Since my dear soul was mistress of her choice, and could of men distinguish her election, hath sealed thee for herself, for thou hast been as one in suffering all that suffers nothing." So basically he's telling Horatio that he's like a really steady guy, that one of the things that he appreciates about Horatio is that he's steadfast. And he says, "A man that fortune buffets and rewards hast 10 with equal thanks, and blessed are those whose blood and judgment are so well commingled." So basically he's saying that he is a very well-balanced individual. And he says that they are not a pipe for fortune's fingers to sound what stops you please. So Horatio does not fall, he's not an emotional victim to the highs of fortune and the lows of fortune. So when he's having bad luck, he's very steady. And when he's having good luck, he's very steady. So Hamlet's just talking about how even killed Horatio is. And this is in stark contrast to Hamlet, right? Because Hamlet's like, I'm going to kill him. And then he's like, let me wait a bit and find out if he's really the ghost and not a demon from hell. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to kill him. And then he's like real depressed because he hadn't killed anybody yet. So Hamlet's real wishy-washy. Hamlet kind of goes up and down. But he's celebrating to Horatio that he's so steady, and that is such a commendable attribute to have. And so then, "Give me that man that is not passion's slave, and I will wear him in my heart's core, in my heart of heart." So a man like that you hold close to your heart. And he says, "As I do thee." Something too much of this. There's a play tonight before the king. So now he's changed the subject, and he's talking to Horatio about the play. And he says, "One scene of it comes near the circumstance," and that's the murder. One scene looks much like the murder. And he says, "Which I have told thee of my father's death. I prithee, when thou seest that act afoot, even with the very comment of thy soul, observe mine uncle." So he's telling Horatio, I want you to watch him. I want you to keep an eye on him. And he says, "If his occulted guilt do not itself unkennel in one speech, it is a damned ghost that we have seen. And my imaginations are as foul as Vulcan's stithe." So he wants him to watch his uncle. And if he sees guilt when the speech is going on, then, he has his answer. And he says, "Give him heedful note, for mine eyes will rivet to his face. And after we will both our judgments join in censure of his seeming." So it's like, I'm going to watch him too. But I want you to watch him as well so we can talk about it later and make sure that we are seeing the same thing, that we have come to the same conclusion, that he feels guilt or whatever, remorse, who knows. And Horatio goes, "Well, my lord, if he still ought that whilst this play is playing, escape detecting, I will pay the theft." So basically Horatio is like, I will watch, my lord, and if I miss it, if he makes a face and I miss it, then I will pay the price for that. Because he's just, it's another way of saying, you better believe I will. You on it. So then Hamlet goes, they are coming to the play. I must be idle, get you a place. So then off screen, we hear like trumpets and that's really good. I need a soundtrack for these videos. So maybe I don't. That was pretty awesome. So then like the players come in, it's like a big how do you do. And the king and the queen and Polonius, Ophelia, Rosencrantz, and Guildenstern, everybody files in. We're all pumped, about to get a show. And the king looks at Hamlet and goes, how fares our cousin? And Hamlet says, excellent in faith of the chameleon's dish. I eat the air, promise crammed, you cannot feed Capone so. What? Like, what? That was nonsense. That doesn't make any sense at all. The only sense that can be made of this is that chameleons were once believed, in Shakespeare's time, to not eat. They thought that they ate air. And so that makes a little sense. And then the whole idea of Claudius being like a chameleon, and he's like showing one side, but yet he can, So it could be that. I tend to think he's just talking crazy just to sort of, keep Claudius on his toes. And it's great here because the king, he says that I have nothing with this answer. He's like, I don't know what to say to that. That's basically what he's saying. He's like, Hamlet, these words are not mine. He's like, I don't understand these. I have no understanding of these. These words cannot be mine. I do not understand them. And Hamlet goes, no, nor mine. Now, my lord, you played once in the university, you say. And he's addressing Polonius at this point. And so Polonius starts, that did I, my lord, and was accounted a good actor. And Hamlet goes, what did you enact? And he said, I did enact Julius Caesar. I was killed in the Capitol. Brutus killed me. And then Hamlet goes, it was a brute part of him to kill, so capital like half there. Be the players ready. So Hamlet just took another opportunity to jab at Polonius and be hateful. And so Rosencrantz comes in after, are the players ready by Hamlet? And he's like, aye, my lord, they say upon your patience. And then the queen calls Hamlet over and she's like, hey, come hither, sit by me. He's like, I saved you a seat, sweetie. Come sit by mommy. And Hamlet goes, no, good mother. Here's metal more attractive. And when whoever is playing Hamlet, whenever he says there's metal more attractive, he usually does it like, there's metal more attractive. And he like heads towards Ophelia. Because at this point, Hamlet is about to just be so crude and so horrible to Ophelia. But we'll talk about it when we get there. So like a metal to a magnet, he's like saying that he's drawn to something better. So he heads that way. And then Polonius notices that this is happening, that Hamlet's like headed towards Ophelia. And he goes, oh, ho, do you mark that? And he's telling the king, see, I told you he was lovesick. Look at him, there he goes. Right? And then Hamlet goes, lady, shall I lie in your lap? And then he lies down at Ophelia's feet. And Ophelia's like, no, my lord. And he keeps going, like he's going hard, like he's being vulgar and horrible and just terrible. But Ophelia's like rolling with it. She's not falling, she's not getting, oh no, oh Hamlet, you're being terrible. She just like rolls with it. She's just like, no. And he's like, I mean my head in your lap. And she's like, aye, my lord, like I know what you mean. And he goes, do you think I meant country matters? And country matters at the time meant vulgar. Do you think I'm being vulgar? And then Ophelia slams him with, I think nothing, my lord. And then he goes, that's a fair thought to lie between its legs. And she goes, what is, my lord? Like she acts like she has no idea what he's talking about. And he goes, nothing. And she goes, you are merry, my lord. Just basically, merry doesn't necessarily mean happy. It just means that he's being odd or brazen or, And he goes, who I? And she's like, I, my lord. And he said, oh, you're only jig maker. What should a man do but be merry? For look how cheerfully my mother looks, and my father died within 2 hours. So he's like, who wouldn't be happy? I mean, look at my mother. My dad died like 2 hours ago, and she is super happy. And then Ophelia corrects him, and she's like, "Nay, 'tis twice 2 months, my lord." Twice 2 months means 4 months. So we've had some time that has passed. So she's like, "Nay, twice 2 months, my lord." And Hamlet goes, "So long." "Nay, then let the devil wear black, for I'll have a suit of sables." So he's like, "Well, if it's been 2 months, or 4 months, why am I wearing mourning clothes? I'm going to get a suit made out of, cuffs and fur. Like a fur suit. Not like a total fur suit, but like lined, a little fancy." And he's like, "Well, I'll start wearing a suit of sables. Oh, heaven, dies 2 months ago and not forgotten yet? Then there's hope a great man's memory may outlive his life half a year. But by Our Lady, he must build churches in, or shall he suffer not thinking on, with the hobby horse, whose epitaph is 4040, the hobby horse is forgot." So basically he's talking about, man, if somebody can be dead for 4 months and, already forgotten, or not already forgotten, he's like, well, there may be hope for me yet. Maybe people just don't disappear after they die. And he said, so maybe I don't have to build a church or some sort of monument to myself so people remember that I once lived. And then he brings up this hobby horse, and that's a symbol of, they used to have May Day parades, and the hobby horse, one of the characters was a man in the front, and then a man would be the back end. And in the theater at the time, the hobby horse was kind of a symbol for like debauchery or something, not, it was space. It meant things that make Miss Jones uncomfortable, and I don't want to talk about it, but you get what I mean. It was body. Okay, so let's keep going. So then the trumpet sounds and the dumb show enters, and we've already talked about how that means a mime show. And so they don't talk, they just kind of mime. They're in a box, I'm in a box, Except they wouldn't say I'm in a box. I'd be a terrible mom. I'd be the worst mom on earth. So, dumb show enters, and we see a player king and a queen. So we have the two actors. And they're loving each other, and they're holding hands, and they're linked, and they're hugging, and she kneels to him, and it's all very, very lovely. And so then, like, she exits the stage, and then the king glides down, and then this little guy like sneaks up and pours poison in the king's ear, and then the queen comes back, finds him dead. Oh, he's dead. And then the poisoner like comes back on stage, and he's like, oh, in the corner, and then they carry off the dead king, and then you see the poisoner like, he's like, "What's up, girl? What you got going on, queen?" And she's like, "Ooh, poisoner, you're so dreamy." And she runs off with the poisoner and exits the mime show. So Ophelia is confused by this. Like, she's watching it, and she looks at Hamlet. She's like, "What means this, my lord? Like, what is this about?" And Hamlet goes, "Mary, this is Michi Malako. It means mischief." So he looks and he goes, "This means mischief is afoot. We're about to see something." And then Ophelia says, "Belike the show imports the argument of the play." So Ophelia is saying here, oh, this must be a summary of what we're going to see. This must be like a synopsis of what the play is going to be about. And then we enter the prologue. And Hamlet and Ophelia are kind of chatting, and he says, "We shall know by this fellow, the players cannot keep counsel, they'll tell all." So as the action is occurring on stage, Hamlet is like pointing to the actors and go, "Ooh, this guy, we shall know by this fellow, the players cannot keep counsel, they'll tell all." And then Ophelia's like, "Will he tell us what this show means?" So she's, they're kind of talking as the players are acting. And he goes, "I, or any show that you'll show him, be not you ashamed to show, he'll not shame to tell you what it means." Well, that's really body too, because she just wants to know what is happening, what they are showing her on stage. And Hamlet's like, show them what you got. I'm sure they'd love to see. And so he's being horrible to Ophelia. And she goes, you are not, I'll mark the plays. Basically, she tells him that he's being naughty. And she's like, you're being naughty, and I'm just going to watch the play. So, what else? So, then the prologue comes on. For us and for our tragedy, here stooping to your clemency, we beg you hearing patiently. So, you've had somebody come on stage, and they've said the prologue. And then Hamlet goes, is it the prologue or the posy of a ring? And Ophelia goes, 'tis brief, my lord. And then Hamlet slams her, and he goes, as woman's love. That was unnecessary. That was unnecessary because Hamlet is the one that, told him that he didn't love her. But then Ophelia also betrayed him, so maybe I'm not mad at the fact that he just did that to her. I know it's complicated. Hamlet's complicated. So then the king and the queen enter, and this is the player king and the player queen, right? Because Claudius and Gertrude they're sitting there watching. They're already in the audience. So what we're going to have is a lot of dialogue between a king and queen who love each other very, very much. So when we have full 30 times hath Phoebus' cart gone round Neptune's salt southern wash, and Tellus orbed ground, and 30 dozen moons with borrowed sheen about the world have times 1230's been, since love our hearts and Hymen did our hands unite, communal and most sacred bands. So he's talking about the length of time that they have been together, that they have been married. And then the queen continues thinking about the time that has passed where they've been together, and she's like, so many journeys may the sun and moon make us count our love be done. But woe is me, you are sick of late. So with this line, we learned that the player king has been ill, and the player queen is concerned about his health. And she says, so far from cheer and far from your former state that I distrust you. Yet though I discomfort you, my lord, it nothing must. For women's fear and love holds quantity in neither aught or in extremity. Now what my love is, proof hath made you known. And as my love is sized, my fear is so. So what she's saying is the fact that I don't believe what you're telling me. I don't believe when you say, oh, I feel much better, because the fact that we love each other and the fact that you don't want to cause me any pain or worry or grief, you would lie to me because I know you love me that much. So she's expressing the fact that she worries that he's sicker than he's letting on. But it is only because he loves her so much that he's trying to protect her. So right here with these guys, this could be a parallel to King Hamlet and Gertrude's relationship. Because remember, Hamlet told us that King Hamlet would grieve if the wind blew too harshly on Gertrude's face. So we know that they had a great love. So this is sort of what's happening here. It's sort of, King Hamlet and Gertrude's relationship. So she's saying, as my love is sized, my fear is so. So she's like, I'm scared equal to the amount of love that I have from you, because my love is so big. My fear is so big, because if I lose you, I would lose everything. So that's what he's saying. Where little fear grows great, great love grows there. And then the player goes, faith, I must leave thee. Love and shortly too. My operant powers their functions leave to do, and thou shalt live in this fair world behind. So basically he tells her, yeah, I'm near death. I'm near death, and I'm going to have to leave this world, and you're going to have to live in it without me. And honored, beloved, and happily one is a kind, for husband shalt thou. Now when he's talking, he's telling her, he's like, okay, once I pass, honored and beloved, and happily one is a kind, for husband, so he's talking about the next husband. Once he passes, he's like, okay, and now, after I die, your husband-to-be, and she gets ill. The player queen gets ill. She's like, oh no, confound the rest. Such love must needs be treason in my breast. So even the idea of taking another husband would be treasonous. And she even goes as far as to say, in second husband, let me be accursed. So let me be cursed. None wed the second, but who killed the first. So she's saying that no woman would remarry unless she killed her first husband. Now that's pretty important, right? And so at this point, Hamlet looks at us and he goes, wormwood, wormwood. Wormwood is very bitter. And so when he sees this, he's thinking about his mom, and he's thinking to himself, that's not what Gertrude did. That's not what Mom did. Mom couldn't even wait 2 months, right? And so he's feeling, ugh. And so then the player queen continues. She says, the instances that second marriage move are base respects of thrift, but none of love. A second time I kill my husband dead, when second husband kisses me in bed. And we know that Hamlet is like obsessed with Claudius and Gertrude, like getting it on. So he's, that whole business about incest and, and we're going to see that more in coming acts or scenes, that he's just like obsessed with this. And so the player king says, I do believe you think what now you speak, but what we do determine oft we break. So he's like, I believe you now. I believe that you truly don't mean to remarry. However, even though sometimes we're like, I will never do that, he says, sometimes we break that decision, oft we break. And he says, purpose is but the slave to memory, of violent birth, but poor validity, which now like fruit unripe sticks on the tree, but full unshaken when thy mellow be. So he's like, that idea is like an unripe fruit. It's on the tree, it's holding steadfast, because time has not passed. You haven't had time to ripen and grow weak and then fall from the tree. So it's a really cool analogy for what the king is saying to his wife. And he says, most necessary 'tis that we forget to pay ourselves what to ourselves is debt, what to ourselves in passion we propose, the passion ending doth the purpose lose. The violence of either grief or joy their own enactures with themselves destroy, where joy most revels, grief doth most lament. Grief joys, joy grieves on slender accident. This world is not fray, nor 'tis not strange, that even our love should with our fortunes change. For 'tis a question left us yet to prove, whether love lead fortune, or else fortune love. The great man down, you mark his favorite flies, the poor advanced makes friends of enemies, and hitherto doth love on fortune tend. This entire paragraph is talking about sort of the wishy-washy nature of man and how time tends to make us more malleable to change, more flexible. We tend not to say, I would never do that, because that's not really something that you can say. People change, people grow. So, and the king understands that, regardless of the queen shaking her fist saying, I will never, as God is my witness, that he understands that, So then, he says, so think thou wilt no second husband wed, but die thy thoughts when thy first lord is dead. So he's like, once I die and some time passes, so will the idea that you won't remarry. That'll die in you. You'll want to remarry. And then the queen, dude, the player queen goes so hard right now. She's like, earth, may earth not give me food, nor heaven, the sun, may it never shine upon me. Sport and repose lock from me day and night, so I don't want to have any fun. I don't want to sleep. I don't want to rest. To desperation turn my trust and hope, and anchor's cheer in prison be my scope. Each opposite that blanks the face of joy meet what I would have well, and it destroy. Both here and hence pursue me lasting strife, if once a widow, ever I be a wife. So she's like, okay, if I do remarry, then I want all of this, I want everything to forsake me, just completely forsake me. I need to be punished. No sunshine, no happiness, no food, no nothing. I deserve nothing. So she goes really hard. And then Hamlet looks at Ophelia and he goes, if she should break it now. And he's talking about her commitment, right? And then the player king continues. He says, 'tis deeply sworn, sweet, leave me here a while. My spirits grow dull and fain I would beguile the tedious day with sleep. So he's saying he's getting weak and it's time for him to take his nappy nap in the orchard. and so he sleeps. And the player queen soothes his little head, and she goes, "Sleep, rock thy brain, and never come mischance between us twain. So may nothing come between me and my precious king." And then Hamlet, at this point, as the queen is stroking her ill husband's head, Hamlet leans over to his mom and goes, "Madam, how like you this play?" And the queen says, "The lady protests too much, methinks." Which is awesome, right? Because Gertrude has got to be seriously uncomfortable watching this, completely remarried to some dude after 2 months. Not even 2 months after her husband's death, and she's seeing this incredibly loyal queen just like, telling the earth to deny her food if she should remarry. So of course the queen, the lady, protests too much. The lady is not flexible enough. She ought to, stuff happens, right? And then Hamlet goes, "Oh, but she'll keep her word." At this point, the king is getting nervous. He's starting to see some parallels. And so he's like, "Have you heard the argument, is there no offense in't?" So at this point, he's like, is this play offensive in any way? Because if it is, I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to shut down this offensive play if my people are not going to like it. Right? And Hamlet's like, no. They do but jest. Poison in jest. No offense in the world. And then the king goes, what do you call this play? And Hamlet goes, "The Mousetrap." "Marry, how?" "Tropically. The play is the image of a murder done in Vienna. Gonzago is the duke's name. His wife, Baptista, you shall see anon. You'll see her in a minute. 'Tis a knavish piece of work, but what? Oh, that? Your majesty. And we have that free souls, it touches us not. Let the galled jade wince, our withers are unwrung." So he's just telling him, you know what, it's just a story, something that happened in Vienna, no bigs, don't worry about it, just let it happen. Just let it happen. Shh, just let it happen, right? And then enter Lucianus, who is one of the characters on the play, and so Hamlet goes, "Oh yeah, this is one Lucianus, nephew to the king," right? Nephew to the king. And then Ophelia goes, "You are a good chorus, my lord," which is basically like, you are telling us everything about the play. So it can either mean, shut your mouth, your spoiler alert, or you really are helping us a lot with this play. So it depends on how you want to play that. And Hamlet, it says, "It would cost you a groaning to take my," oh wait, I totally skipped some. Okay, it says, "You're a good chorus, my lord." So you're good at telling us what's going on. And then Hamlet goes, "I can interpret between you and your lover if I could see the puppets dallying." So basically means if, he wants to watch. And Ophelia goes, "You are keen, my lord, you are keen," which means you're being sharp. And he says, "It would cost you a groaning to take my edge off," which is being, bawdy again. It's being vulgar. And Ophelia just rolls with it. She's like, "Still better and worse." She just throws some sass at him. And then Hamlet goes, "So you must take your husbands. Begin, murderer, pox, leave thy damnable faces, and begin. Come, the croaking raven doth bellow for revenge." So Hamlet's mad because evidently the characters aren't moving as quickly as he would like for them to, because at this point he just wants to get to the murder part. So he's like, come on, step things up. So then Lucianus speaks, the character, and he goes, "Thoughts black, hands apt, drugs fit, and times agreeing, Confederate season, else no creature seen. Thou mixture rank of midnight weeds collected, with Hecate's bane thrice blasted, thrice infected." So of course he's sneaking up on our poor sleeping player king, and he's like, he sounds like a witch, like this is like a witch, like, "Thoughts black, hands apt, drugs fit, and time agreeing." So he's like super evil, super sketch. And so he's like creeping up on the king as he's saying all these scary things. And he's like, bloop, 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 bloop. He pours the poison into the sleeper's ear. And then Hamlet says, "He poisons him in the gardens for estates? Ha, his name's Gonzago. The story is extant and written in very choice Italian. You shall see anon how the murderer gets the love of Gonzago's wife." And then Ophelia On stage, we would see the king. However, Ophelia is the first to notice that the king, gets up at this point. Poison in the air, the king, loses his business and, jumps up. And Hamlet goes, what frightened with false fire? So he's acting completely innocent, ooh, what is the cause of this, And the queen goes, how fares my lord? Right? And then Polonius goes, give over the play. And the king is on his feet, give me some light, away! And then everybody start going, lights, turn on the lights. The king wants the lights. And then everybody rushes off, except Hamlet and Horatio. So this is huge, right? Because Hamlet has his answer. Because the king, freaked out hardcore. And then Hamlet goes, why let this drunken deer go weep, the heart ungalled play? For some must watch while some must sleep, so runs the world away. Would not this, sir, in forest of feathers, if the rest of my fortunes turn Turk with me, with 2 provincial roses on my raised shoes, get me fellowship and a cry of players, sir? So basically, this right here, these were lines that were meant to be spoken by the actor. But because the king jumped up and the king stopped the play short, the actor wasn't allowed to say them. So once everybody runs out, Hamlet's not done. His lines, he wrote these lines, and by God, they will be said. And so he says them. And then he looks over at Horatio and is like, yeah, see, that sounded like the cry of a player, didn't it, sir? And then Horatio goes, half a share. And Hamlet goes, a whole one, aye, for thou dost know. O Damon dear, this realm dismantled was of Job himself, and now reigns here a very, very Pajak. And so he's continuing with the lines, and Horatio's like, you might have rhymed. And Hamlet laughs, and he's like, oh, good Horatio, I'll take the ghost's word for 1,000 pounds, didst perceive. So he's like, the ghost tells the truth, he is speaking the truth. Did you see, didst thou perceive? And Horatio goes, very well, my lord. And Hamlet goes upon the talk of poisoning. Did you see him get up when the poison happened? And Horatio's like, I did very well note him. And Hamlet's like, aha! Come some music, come the recorders, for if the king like not the comedy, why then be like he likes it not parody. Come some music. So at this point, Hamlet's just partying, right? He's got his answer. He's like, yes, it's time to party. And then Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come in, and they totally ruin all the fun. Because Guildenstern's like, good my lord, vouchsafe me a word with you. So Guildenstern's like, I need to talk. And Hamlet's like, sir, a whole history. He's like, I'll give you all the talkings you want. And then Guildenstern says, the king, sir. And Hamlet just cuts him off, and he's like, aye, sir, what of him? And he's like, is in his retirement marvelous distempered. So he's out of sorts. And Hamlet goes, drunk. Is he drunk again? He drinks a lot. I think he might be an alcoholic, right? He's like, drink, sir? And Guildenstern's like, no, my lord, rather with choler. So he's like, no, he's not drunk, he's mad. Right? And Hamlet goes, your wisdom should show itself more richer to signify this to the doctor. For me to put him to his purgation would perhaps plunge him into far more choler. So I really like this, because then Hamlet looks at Guildenstern and he's like, well, if you were so smart, then you would take the king to the doctor about his anger problem, because if you send me, I'm only going to make him angrier. Right? And so then Guildenstern says, good my lord, put your discourse into some frame. So he's like, get your stuff together. Get yourself framed up. And he says, and start not so wildly from my affair. So Guildenstern's getting kind of stern and telling Hamlet that he needs to handle it. And Hamlet's like, I am tame, sir. Pronounce. So keep talking. What do you want? And Guildenstern goes, the queen your mother in most great affliction of spirit hath sent me to you. And then he says, you are welcome. Right? That's like, you're like, well, lucky you. You're going to hang out with me because the queen sent you to me. So he's like, you're welcome. And then Guildenstern goes, nay, good my lord, this courtesy is not of the right breed. So he's like, no, this is not the manner in which I was sent. He says, if it shall please you to make me a wholesome answer, if it will please you to be serious, I will do your mother's commandment. If not, your pardon and my return shall be the end of my business. And Hamlet says, sir, I cannot. And Guildenstern goes, what, my lord? And Hamlet goes, make you a wholesome answer. My wit's diseased. Right? So he's saying, I can't give you a good answer because remember, I'm crazy. Haven't you noticed I'm crazy? Right? My wit's diseased. And he says, but sir, such answer as I can make. However, I will tell you this. He says, you shall command, or rather, as you say, my mother. Therefore, no more. But to the matter, my mother, you say. And then Rosencrantz steps in. And he goes, then thus she says, your behavior has struck her into amazement and admiration. Because remember, Guildenstern is kind of the weaker of the two, right? He's the one who told Hamlet that they were sent for. Rosencrantz is like the big dog, and Guildenstern's like the little dog. And Rosencrantz just can't take it anymore, and he's like, look, your mother says that you have amazed, and she has no idea what's going on. She is just like in shock of what you're doing. And Hamlet goes, oh, what a wonderful son am I that I can still astonish my mother. And then he goes, but is there no sequel at the hill of this mother's admiration? So he's like, oh, she just adores me. And Rosencrantz goes, she desires to speak with you in her closet ere you go to bed. So you need to go up to her room and talk to her before you go to bed. And then Hamlet goes, we shall obey, were she 10 times our mother. Have you any further trade with us? Rosencrantz goes, my lord, you once did love me. And Hamlet goes, and so I do still, by these pickers and stealers. Pickers and stealers are hands, but by referring to them as pickers and stealers like a thief, it's kind of like a jab. It's like dishonest. It's a dishonest thing to say. And Rosencrantz goes, good my lord, what is your cause of distemper? You surely bar the door upon your own liberty if you deny your griefs to your friend. So basically when he says you bar the door upon your own liberty, he's saying that you bar the door to your own happiness when you don't let your friends in, when you don't tell them what's going on. So that's what he's saying there. And Hamlet goes, sir, I like advancement, which means I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. And Rosencrantz says, how can that be when you have the voice of the king himself for your succession in Denmark? So at this point, Rosencrantz is trying to appeal to the fact that Hamlet is next in line for the crown, and that he needs to behave like a prince, that he needs to stop being foolish, right, in a sense. And Hamlet goes, aye, sir, but while the grass grows, the proverb is something musty. Now, this is an old proverb that was sort of like, while the grass grows, even though something is meant to be for you. So while the grass grows, and sometimes in this scene, sometimes it's left in some versions and others, it says something about a steely steed. It's kind of like it's almost like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. It's kind of the fact that Hamlet is meant to be prince, but he's telling us here that he doesn't want it. He doesn't want to be prince. He doesn't want it. Because at this point, the only thing he wants is Claudius dead. So, we know Hamlet fairly well at this point. I don't think he'd be a great king. I think he's too wishy-washy. I think he's too emotional. I think he's too tumultuous. So, so by his own admission, he's like, I want to be prince, right? He just doesn't want it. And so the players come in, and they have recorders. Did you guys play recorders when you were in elementary school? Those little plastic things like, that's exactly what they sound like. So they're playing on those. And then Hamlet sees them, and he's like, the recorders, let me see one. And he snatches it right out of that player's hand. And he goes, to withdraw with you. Why do you go about to recover the wind of me as if you would drive me into a toil? So when he grabs the recorder, he looks at Guildenstern, and he's like, why do you go about to recover the wind of me as if you would drive me into a toil? Like, why are you trying to wear me out by, oh, you must go see your mom. Oh, she's really mad at you. Oh, you're going to be. So he's like, why are you doing this? And then Guildenstern goes, oh, my lord, if my duty be too bold, my love is too unmannerly. So Guildenstern is claiming that he's coming to talk to Hamlet out of love. And Hamlet goes, I do not well understand that. Will you play upon this pipe? And he, kind of shoves the recorder at him. And Guildenstern's like, Lord, I cannot. And Hamlet's like, no, I pray you. And Guildenstern's like, no, believe me, dude, I cannot play that. And Hamlet's like, oh, but I do beseech you. And he's like, I know, no touch of it, my lord. So he's like, I don't know how to play that thing. And then Hamlet looks at him and he goes, 'tis as easy as lying. Govern these vintages with your fingers, he's talking about the little holes, and give it breath with your mouth, and it will discourse most eloquent music. Look you, these are the stops. So he's like showing him. And then Guildenstern goes, but these cannot I command to any utterance of harmony. I have not the skill. So he's like, I can't do it. I can't make those notes. I don't have the skill. And then Hamlet flips it, and he goes, why? Look you now, how unworthy a thing you make of me. You would play upon me. You would seem to know my stops. You would pluck out the heart of my mystery. You would sound me from my lowest note to the top of my compass. And there is much music, excellent voice in this little organ, yet cannot you make it speak. Sblood, do you think I am easier to be played on than a pipe? Call me what instrument you will, though you can fret me, you cannot play upon me. So Hamlet has totally flipped the script and made himself like the pipe. He's like, so you aren't willing to try to play this pipe, blow air into this pipe and make notes, but yet you come to me with your deceitful words and your lies and your breathing lies out of your lungs, and you think you can play me, but you can't even play this little garbage flute. And then Polonius walks in, and so Hamlet directs his attention, and he's like, God bless you, sir. So he totally burns Guildenstern, and then it's Polonius' turn. And Polonius is mad. He's like, my lord, the queen would speak with you, and presently. And Hamlet's like, do you see yonder cloud? It looks like a camel. And Polonius is like, well, yeah, it's shaped like a camel. And then Hamlet goes, no, looks like a weasel. And then Polonius goes, well, it's back like a weasel. And Hamlet goes, no, or like a whale. And then Polonius goes, very like a whale. And then Hamlet goes, then will I come to my mother by and by. They fool me to the top of my bent, I will come by and by. So he just ripped Polonius one, because he's just like, look, it's a camel. And Polonius agrees, and he's like, no, it's this. Polonius agrees, he goes, no. So he's just being terrible. And so Polonius is glad, because even though he had to take some abuse, Hamlet's going to finally go to his mother's room. So everybody exits except Hamlet, and Hamlet looks at Polonius, and he's like, by and by is easily said. Polonius leaves. Then he looks at Rosencrantz, Guildenstern, Horatio, and the players, and he's like, tells them to leave. And then he has a moment with himself again. And he realizes that it's the witching time of night, which is midnight, when churchyards yawn and hell itself breathes out contagion to this world. And it's also the time that his father can walk. And he says, now could I drink hot blood and do such bitter business as the day would quake to look on. So now he's fired up again. He's like, I'm ready to drink hot blood. It's on like Donkey Kong. So he's ready to scrap. He's getting scrappy. It's time to throw hands, right? And so he says, soft, now to my mother. O heart, lose not thy nature. Let not ever the soul of Nero enter this firm bosom. Let me be cruel, not unnatural. I will speak daggers to her, but use none. My tongue and soul in this be hypocrites. How in my words somever she be shent, to give them sills never my soul consent. So he's fired up. He's about to head into Gertrude's room. He has some words for her, although he's not going to kill her or stab her. He will speak daggers. He will not use them. And so then he exits, and he is going to head up to Gertrude's room, which is also called the closet in some versions. And that is Act 3, Scene 2, and we will pick up with Act 3, Scene 3 in the next video.